does having awareness that brains work differently help us to be more effective as practitioners? And of course, the SF general stance doesn't tend to use diagnosis. It's independent of, it doesn't matter. People, Steve always used to answer the question, people say, does it work with this? Does it work with that? And he'd say, I don't know, because it's not about working with a condition. And often the phrase that's used is what's happening between the noses, not what's happening between the ears. So we're not analysing and diagnosing and sorting out what's going on in people's heads. So it's systemic in what's between the noses and in the interaction. But our sort of question is, how might recognising that what's between the ears makes a difference to what happens between the noses? Yeah, and we think it does. So
I think it might help to start with what would make it a dirty word, right? Because we've both grappled with this quite a bit, especially when it started to be something that we both were exploring, and it started to be, relevant and become a bit more centered. Are we allowed? Is it useful? Is this a question that, as true as SFers, we're allowed to ask, kind of thing? And of course, it's not as black and white, but what some of the points of views that we explored and arrived at is, well, if it is seen as a bad thing, right? Like if I have a diagnosis and I see it as something limiting me, or something that might seem like a reason for, well, does it work with X or does it work with Y? I might not, as a solution-focused practitioner, consider it relevant, or maybe even not helpful.
We talk about, where is the pathology? If we see it as being a limiting thing, if it's a thing between the ears, if it's an individual issue, then we have a problem, we have an impairment. And if it's a societal issue, a contextual issue, as many people said here, it's not an issue. It's not even a linear thing, divergence. There's like normative, the kind of classic bell curve thing is, you've got this linear. If most people are in the middle, and then some are at this end and some are at this end. It's not even linear. It's a whole multi-spectrum thing. And if we were to welcome all of that as being part of the system, and as Gaia says here, the issues come from society, as in there's nothing wrong with anybody. It's just that things are different, and if it creates limiting assumptions or tries to put people through tubes. And as somebody said here, it might be a dirty word when you have to work through all the beliefs. So it's just that society associates with the label. So neurodiversity pride. So if we don't, so for example, it's really sunny this week, okay, and I've been loving being out in the sunshine. I've been away this week and I've been walking in the Peak District, and I can go out in the sunshine and I can put some sunscreen on, but somebody with red hair and pale skin, and all their family of kids with red hair and pale skin that I saw, they're all covered with hats and things. I don't think that they are, not appropriate. This is a stupid metaphor. It's not going the right place, but it's not that there's anything wrong with them. They just can't tolerate sun in the same way that I can, and therefore, they need to go around with their umbrellas and their hats and everything else. So it's the neutral info. And figuring out how you show up in the world. And there's a lovely quote from I got it off ADHD UK, actually. It's an analogy some of you may have seen about when we see a label as being helpful or a dirty word. And it's a quote: "Why do you need a label? Because there is comfort in knowing that you are a normal zebra, not a strange horse. Because you can't find a community of other zebras, and you can't learn what makes a zebra thrive, what brings you, a zebra, joy, if you don't know that you're a zebra and you are learning solely from horses. It's near impossible to be happy and mentally healthy if you're spending all your life thinking you're a failed horse, having others tell you you are a failed horse, ouch, had that plenty, when all along you could be thriving and understood if everyone, including you, just knew you were a zebra. So
yeah, I love I always love that because it's so to the point, right? And so wrapping that into our discussion, if we're seeing diagnosis or identification, neurotype identification, if we want to take the label off, as openly talking about or acknowledging that this is a zebra, that this person's a zebra, and that's part of who they are, rather than something that limits them, then could that not be compatible? Could that not be, in fact, not only not a dirty word, but actually a really, really helpful part of it? Value neutral information, just like, questions about family, if they have that, questions about other aspects of their life, then aren't we, by being, okay, don't shout at me, but by being such sticklers for, no, this is value, we don't include diagnoses, aren't we then potentially part of the problem, because we are assuming that diagnosis comes with a, is a problem, versus, oh, okay, here's another piece of neutral information you've given me about you, that is useful to know, because maybe we, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Maybe we ask questions in a certain way. Maybe we adjust the session a little bit, if that's helpful. And I might, as a practitioner, I might not know that will be useful. Or perhaps as a practitioner, it doesn't matter. I don't know. That's part of what we're discussing.
Last year at the SF24, Adam Froer and Mia Lunder and Rachel Gillibrand did a session where they looked at what happens in the client's brains, and they use an EEG machine, where you put on electrodes. And there was a SF watch party last, I don't know, March or April, the SF watch party discussed this. And during it, Adam was there, Adam Froer was there, saying about, he was watching the neuroimaging on the screen as these people were being asked questions. And most neurotypical people, brains followed a certain pattern of where where it was lighting up, the order that things went in, such that he was able to get to a point where he could predict when they were going to answer the question from the pattern of neuroactivity. And in this group of people, I think it was 12 altogether, and they had one person with autism and one person with ADHD. And both of those two had very different brain patternings showing up on the screen. The person with autism, I can't remember the detail of it. It was which side it was, but it was all seemed to be very logical, but it didn't mean that, but also the emotional side was showing up. The person with ADHD, instead of kind of having things going in order, everything lit up all of the time, all of the colors. And it seemed to be that people needed to have longer to talk it out, get it out on the outside. And that's certainly my experience. And I talk about my brain, one of the metaphors I use is that it's like having spaghetti and fireworks in there. Everything's all connected to everything all the time going off. And I can't necessarily control what I'm going to have going off and what's connected in the attention. So it's basically, that's just to say it's not made up. Okay, there are differences in how things function between the ears that do impact on how things come out between the noses and how we interact between the noses.
What I've noticed in clients as well is that sometimes having that explicit lens or having that explicit framing also might give permission to describe a preferred future that doesn't look like anybody else's, right? So very often I've heard best hopes that are like, I just want to be more organized. And I know, but sometimes just being able to know that, yeah, no, that's actually neither likely to be happening nor particularly desirable for anybody. It's really boring. So being able to perhaps describe a preferred future more freely without that mask, once the client knows that, oh yeah, no, you know, instead of perhaps describing a preferred future where I've woken up after a full night's sleep, knowing that, oh, no, on this day, I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. because I, you know, will be starting it at that time. And that's just how my brain works, kind of thing. That pops up is it ever okay to bring it up as a practitioner? That I've also grappled with as someone who is an SF practitioner and also diagnoses ADHD, you know, that hat dance.
It makes a huge difference to me knowing about how my brain works and the kind of the realisticness. So we talk about best hopes and then we talk about preferred future and everybody goes through this description. So suppose you woke up in the morning and be, oh, I'd leap out of bed and it'd be lovely and sunny and I'd, you know, I'd journal for whatever and I'd make a lovely cup of tea and it'd be all glorious. That is not how my mornings go at all. That is never how my mornings are ever going to go. Because that's a dream that we talk about. That's kind of like creating a dream in a neurodivergent world of expectation. Whereas a best hope for me would be knowing that I went to bed at 3 a.m. because I had something that I was hyper-focusing on the night before and I was stressing about today, and knowing that I only got 2.5 hours sleep. Realistically, how am I going to be at my best given all of these things and the lens and the information? And so in true ADHD fashion, I've forgotten what we started with the question, but you know, for me, helping to have, as we say, helping to have best hopes and a preferred future description that fits with who we are and how we go about doing life. You know, I'm a night owl. You know, I may not go to bed I didn't go to bed till 3 last night. I messaged Amaechi at 3. She picked it up, you know, 10 minutes later at 5 o'clock her time and she was awake. You know, I don't hold it against her. And she doesn't hold it against me. You know, it's that kind of people, oh, well, you must get up early and you must do these things. But so making something a real hope and a real future in the sphere of our own functioning and the context that we live in, rather than having dreams based on a brain I don't have. Because when I'm trying to make things work in a neurotypical way, or I'm trying to fit the expectations, I'm constantly being a failed horse. And so so this thing about, is it ever okay to bring it up? You know, when this first came up in a conversation with me, it's like, oh my God, hell, if I'd have known for the first 55 years of my life what I've known for the last 3 years of my life, oh no, wait, that's not even the right age. I'd see, I can't even do the maths. But you know, then I'd have gone about it with a lot more compassion and a lot more understanding of how to do the best me.